Just bear with me 1 second. If I can't find it like this, then I'll just get started. All right, hell with it. I'd like to start off by saying Barakateh Hawa, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruchak Wadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one pretty much is To the Jew First and Then to the Greek. And I pretty much just was having a little fun with the Chat GPT. And just bear with me 1 second. And I was just pretty much asking it certain questions just to see, the response. And, just going back and forth with it for a little bit, just seeing if it would give me the information that I need. So, like I said, just bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to get... Damn thing still ain't coming up, huh? Son of a bitch. All right. So, like I said, I was just having a little fun. I'm just trying to find the thing on here, but Satan ain't allowing me to get to it. Just want to kind of, keep an eye on the comments. Almost there. Hold on. If not, you can move on. Fucking hell, boy. Fucking thing don't want to come off of shit. Being stubborn. Fuck it. Shit pisses you off. Oh, here we go. See? Fuck. it. All right, so let's go to it. Salaki for the late start. So I asked ChatGPT, did any of the Hellenized Jews forget they were Hebrews? This is a deep and fascinating question, historically and culturally. The short answer is yes. And see, when you understand that, then you get a better idea as to what the New Testament is about. Because no matter how we slice it, no matter how Spirit has us break it down, you have to remember you have the other gospel that's being taught. And the majority of the world is on board with the other gospel because they've been programmed in their mind to accept that that behavior, because they don't understand, neither do they know who the Heavenly Father Yahweh Bashem Yahushua really is. It says, to varying degrees, some Hellenized Jews did not lose or abandon parts of their Hebrew identity, while others retained strong element of it despite adopting to Greek culture. And this is correct. This is why you had the Hellenized Jews, which were ones that knew that they were Israelites, that spoke the Greek language, that turned to the Lord. And then you had the Hellene, or the Hellenized, and they were just Greeks. They were just Israelites that identified as Greek only. They didn't identify by their Hebrew roots, and some of them even lost their Hebrew roots. It says context: Hellenistic Judaism. After Alexander the Great's conquest, late 4th century BCE, Greek language, customs, and philosophy spread widely, including throughout Judea. Many Jews in the diaspora, especially in the cities like Alexandria, adopted Greek language, dress, names, and even aspects of Greek thought. These are often referred to as Hellenized Jews. Okay? And then when you go to Acts, the 6th chapter, and other parts in the scriptures, those would be known as the Hellenistes. All right? Those were the Hellenized Jews that knew that they were Israelites. They were following the law, statutes, commandments, keeping the Passover, but they mostly spoke the Greek language, and they spoke the Hebrew broken Hebrew, like with an accent. All right. Degrees of assimilation. Not all Hellenized Jews forgot they were Hebrews, but some assimilated so deeply into Greek culture that they stopped speaking Hebrew or Aramaic, using Greek exclusively. They neglected or reinterpreted Torah laws, blending them with Greek philosophy or ethics. They adopted Greek names and identities. Some even worshiped in syncretic forms that blurred lines between Judaism and Greco-Roman religion. So you see what happened. That's why the Apostle Paul said, that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led, because that's what destroyed you. So it says evidence of identity loss or strain. The Maccabean Revolt 167 to 160 BCE, this uprising was sparked largely because some Jews were adopting Greek ways, including gymnasium culture, which required nudity, which conflicted with Jewish norms like circumcision. The revolt shows a tension between traditionalists and Hellenizers. And this is pretty much what the traditionalists were, the ones like the Pharisees and them, right, that would keep traditions. The Hellenized would be the ones that they would classify as uncircumcised. And you have to understand this history in order to understand the New Testament. If you don't understand this history, you're not going to understand the New Testament. And in order for you to understand it, the Holy Spirit has to be working with you. All right? So it doesn't matter how many times you slice this up and give it to these Christians. They're not going to accept it because their mind is, their conscience is seared with a hot iron based off of the world Christian view. Philo of Alexandria, 1st century BCE, CE, a deeply Hellenized Jew, he wrote in Greek and used Platonic ideas to interpret Jewish scripture, but still maintain a clear Jewish identity. So he was an Israelite that dabbled in the Greek culture, Greek language, but he still retained his identity as an Israelite. The letters of Aristeas, 2nd century BCE, shows Greek-speaking Jews needing a Greek translation of the Torah, the Septuagint, a sign that many no longer understood Hebrew. It says some went so far as to reverse circumcision, epispasm, that's what it's called, which indicates shame or rejection of Jewish identity to fit into Greek athletic and civic life. And this is why they were called uncircumcised. They were looked down with disdain. You see? In Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, it said they are called the uncircumcision, by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh, made by flesh, which shows you that those Israelites in Israel that kept the law, statutes, and commandments, they had a disdain for the Israelites that were Hellenized. Did they truly forget? Not in a literal sense. Most Hellenized Jews likely knew they were ethnically and religiously Jewish. or Israelites, even if they no longer practice or fully identify with Jewish law. And that doesn't matter because they lost their identity. But some may have lost their connection over generations. And this is what we've been saying. We've been saying that these Israelites, that this is why the Apostle Paul mentioned about there's no difference between the Jew or the Greek. Why? Because they're both Israelites. It's just that one knew, the other one didn't. It says, especially in places where Israelite communities were small or under pressure to assimilate. Right? Because it says, well, let's get it real quick here in Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter. And we're just going to go straight to the point. And I think the GNT goes even a little bit more explicit into it. But let's just go ahead. 2 Maccabees 6:6. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient fasts or feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So you couldn't even call yourself an Israelite. So if you couldn't call yourself an Israelite and you were conquered by the Greeks, what would you be calling yourself? Okay, going back. It says, others created a new hybrid identity, Greek in form, Jewish in content. All right? So in some, yes, some in Hellenized Jews distanced themselves so much from Jewish tradition that they functionally forgot or at least ceased to live as Hebrews. But many others balanced Greek culture with Jewish faith in creative ways. That's why they were known as the Hellenistes, which were Greek-speaking Jews, but still kept the customs of Israel. The spectrum of identity ranged from total assimilation to proud hybridity to zealous resistance. Yep, those are the three. And that's why you have three factions. The Jews, the Hellenized Jews, and the Hellene. That's right here. I just broke it down. The total assimilation, Hellene, Israelite foreigners. Proud hybridity, the Hellenistes, which are the Grecians, the ones that were Greek-speaking Jews, to zealous resistance, the ones that fought it all the way, like the Maccabees, so on and so forth, the Assyrians. So the next question that says, so would these Hellenized Jews call themselves Greeks since some of them lost their identity? Yes, in some cases, Hellenized Jews, especially in the diaspora, may have identified as Greeks. See? Culturally or politically, while still being ethnically Israelites. Over time, some may have embraced a Greek identity so fully that they no longer saw themselves primarily as Jews. Right, like you had Tiberius Julius Alexander, who was an Israelite. He was a general in the Roman army, and he did not identify with his, Israelite identity. He didn't even mess with it. He just was straight up all on the Greek tip, just like Timothy's father, who was an Israelite that liked the customs of the Greeks better, especially if they abandoned Jewish religious practices, language, and community ties. Here's how this unfolded. Number one, cultural Greek identity. Many Hellenized Jews spoke only Greek, dressed like Greeks, had some name, e.g. Jason, Menelaus, Alexander, and were educated in Greek philosophy. These were Israelites. In Alexandria, for example, Jews held prominent roles in Greek civic life. These Jews might call themselves Hellenes, see, culturally or politically, but really in this case, the ones that were in Alexandria were not called Hellenes. They were called Hellenistes. Let's go to that. See, because they playing games over here. We ain't playing no games. Let's go to Acts 6 to show you how the devil operates. The devil operates very slick. Yes, he's very slick. He's very good at it. And that's what the Lord gave him. He was more subtle than any beast of the field. And yes, they do a great job at it. Matter of fact, before I read this, let's scroll down to 9, verse 9. I'll start at 8. And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose a certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. So these are Israelites that are down in the, some of them are in the northern parts of so-called Africa, right? Like the Alexandrian Jews, the Cyrenian Jews, right? That spoke the Greek language but still kept the customs. So what did they call themselves? Acts 6:1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration, right? Because you had the Israelites that knew they were Israelites, that spoke the Hebrew language, that were being shown more favor than the Israelites that only spoke the Greek language or spoke broken Hebrew. So that's what was going on. So now, what is this word here, Grecians, when we go to the Greek? When you scroll down, Grecians there, you get the word Hellenistes, Hellenistes, which the root word goes back to the word Hellene, but the word that identifies them as Hellenistes, a Hellenist or Greek-speaking Jew. Okay? They did not identify as just straight up Hellene. They identified as Israelites, but that spoke the Greek language, a Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs of the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue, and use the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. All right, and this is why you had the title over Yahushua's name, Yahushua of Nazareth, King of the Jews. They had it written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, because you had Israelites coming from all walks of life back then, and they spoke primarily those three languages. And that was around the time of Passover. So you had a lot of Israelites from different lands, but these were ones that knew that they were Israelites. So that's wrong here. The Alexandrians did not call themselves, Hellene. They were known as Hellenistes, which were Greek-speaking Jews. All right. Joined Greek institutions like the gymnasia, often reserved for citizens, try to gain citizenship in Greek city-states, which sometimes meant downplaying or denying Jewish customs, which we just read. Oh, did we read that? Yeah. It was not lawful for them to profess themselves to be Israelites or Jews. So even some underwent surgery to reverse circumcision, epispasm, not just out of physical shame, but to pass as Greeks in civic life. See, especially in public naked athletic contests, which were central to Greek identity. Number 2, political identity versus ethnic religious identity. In the ancient world, Greek could mean more than ethnicity. It could refer to language, Hellenophones, education, paideia, civic membership, polis, participation, philosophical worldview. So a Hellenized Jew could plausibly think of himself as a Greek by culture, even while technically a Jew by birth. Over time, if religious practice was lost, the Israelite identity might fade entirely in favor of a Hellenistic one. Come on, man. And this is exactly what happened. So it goes on to say, historical examples. Menelaus, the high priest in Second Maccabees, was seen as a traitor, Hellenized Jew who aligned with Seleucid Greek authorities and actively suppressed Jewish law. So he would be considered what? An apostate. An apostate in Israel was no different than how they looked at the actual nations, the actual Gentiles. All right? And that's why certain ones of them, came to the point where they were so distasteful, whether they did it on purpose or not, that they were looked down upon as if they were just straight up heathens. His name is Greek, and he likely saw himself more aligned with Greek elites than with Torah observant Jews. Jewish apostates, or Israelite apostates, who sided with Antiochus IV, the Seleucid king who outlawed Jewish practices. See, Israelite practices. So that's what happened. So they assimilated into the Greek culture And over time, their children forgot their Israelite heritage. During the Maccabean period, may have completely adopted a Greek identity, at least outwardly. In Roman times, some Israelite Jews in cities like Antioch or Ephesus may have blended in so thoroughly that they no longer thought of themselves as distinctly Israelites, unless facing persecution or exclusion. So come on, man. So it says, did they fully become Greeks? Yes, some probably did, at least in their own minds and in the eyes of their community. This is why the Apostle Paul came back with this here in Ephesians 4. Come on, man. And this is why these Christians like Vocab and them, they dismiss the Apocrypha, because the Apocrypha puts the puzzle together as to why you had these individuals in the New Testament being called Gentiles or Greeks that salvation was opened up to. Okay, Ephesians chapter 4. And 17, this I say therefore and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as Gentiles or Israelite foreigners walk, in the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of the Most High through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness to work all uncleanness with greediness. Right, because they no longer had, they were past feeling. When they broke the law, they didn't feel any remorse or sorrow for it because they forgot. Because their understanding was darkened through the ignorance that was in them and the blindness of their heart. So they didn't know. That's why here, going back, did they fully become Greeks? Yes, some probably did, at least in their own minds and in the eyes of the communities. Over generations, intermarriage, loss of language, and religious assimilation could result in complete identity shift. Their descendants may have thought of themselves simply as Greeks, forgetting or minimizing Israelite ancestry. Come on, man. Some Hellenized Jews did call themselves Greeks, especially in the diaspora. They often identify with Greek culture and politics more than with Israelite tradition. Over time, especially if they abandon religious observance, their Israelite identity could erode to the point of being functionally lost. Others retain dual identities or navigated the tension between the two. The story of Hellenized Jews is one of identity negotiation. Some walk a fine line, others cross it completely. And that's what happened to the Greeks or Gentiles of the New Testament. So what I did is, so could Romans 10 and 12 refer to these Hellenized Jews as the Greeks in that passage? You know, and here goes where Esau gets slick. Right? We're going to read this first, because you saw all of that, right? They gave you all of that. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, come on, how? But then when you ask the direct question from the scripture, now here comes the world Christian view, answer. Romans 10 and 12, I'm starting 11. For the scripture saith, whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek. Why? Because they are Israelites. For the same Lord overall is rich unto all that call upon her. Yeah, because those are Israelites. So going back here, so could Romans 10 and 12 refer to these Hellenized Jews as the Greeks in that passage? Excellent and insightful question. Yes, it's quite possible that the Greeks in Romans 10 12 could include Hellenized Jews, but Paul is primarily referring to Gentiles, non-Jews. Come on, man. In that passage, you just said that we just went through this whole discourse of the Israelites, losing their identity. But now all of a sudden, well, no, he wasn't really talking. I mean, you could add that in it. They might throw a micro C hip in there, but that's not what it's talking about. It's really talking about the Greeks, the actual Greeks. No, stop it. However, the historical context of Hellenization makes the line a little more layered than it might first appear. Why? Because this is exactly what these scriptures in the New Testament are talking about, between the Gentiles and the Greeks, that salvation is open to. That's why in certain passages it says the nations are going to go into captivity or be beaten, right? And others it says that they're going to be saved. Why is that? Because you have differences. You have the actual Gentiles, which are going to go into captivity, slavery, and then you have the Israelite foreigners, which we call Israelites in the Gentile state of mind. So you could understand that it's talking about Israelites, but these lost their way. So it says, Romans 10 and 12, ESV, for there is no difference between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. Who are the Greeks here? In the Greco-Roman world, Greek, Hellene, had come to broadly mean non-Israelite Gentiles, which is not true, not always, especially those part of the wider Hellenistic Greek-speaking pagan culture. So in the simplest reading, Paul is saying there is no distinction between Jew and Gentile. No, it's not what he's saying. There's no distinction between Jew and the Greeks or the Israelites that were into that Greek. All can be saved through Yahushua, yeah, because they're Israelites. But could it also include Hellenized Jews? Yes, in a cultural sense. Here's why. Some Hellenized Jews were culturally indistinguishable from Greeks, especially in the diaspora, places like Corinth, Ephesus, Alexandria, etc. Paul himself was a Hellenized Jew in many ways. He wrote in Greek. He quoted Greek poets. Acts 17. He was a Roman citizen. In places where Israelite and Gentile identities blurred, Paul may have been speaking to a hybrid audience. No, he wasn't. He was speaking to, if you want to say a hybrid audience, you could say Israelites that knew that they were Israelites and Israelites that didn't know that they were Israelites. Jews by ancestry who lived like Greeks, Gentiles who were God-fearers or sympathetic to Judaism. No, there's no such thing. Fully pagan Greeks. Well, you had Israelites that were heavy into that pagan. Layers of meanings. So in Romans 10 and 12, when Paul says no distinction between Jew and Greek, he's working with both. No, he's not. See how now that the truth is out about the Hellenized Jews, now all of a sudden, well, no, let's talk about both. So you got to equate both in there because, they both play a major role in it, brother. You see? But that's how the devil does. Theological categories, the Most High saves people not by ethnicity or Torah observances, but by faith. But what people? Israelites. No matter how many times you bring it out, they don't want to hear it. Cultural, social category in daily life. Jews and Greeks lived in sharply divided social worlds, but Paul declares a new unity in Yahushua because they were both Israelites. Because of this, some Hellenized Jews might have seen themselves in both groups, and Paul's message resonates with that ambiguity. No, it does not. A Jew who had taken on Greek customs, right, might feel alienated from traditional Judaism, but also not fully accepted by pagan Greeks. Paul's gospel directly into the gray area. Oh boy, here we go with the gray areas. Nope. Romans 10:12 primarily refers to ethnic Jews and Gentile Greeks with Israelite foreigners, emphasizing the universality of salvation through Yahushua. Culturally, Hellenized Jews might have identified with both categories. Nope. And Paul's language could intentionally blur the lines to emphasize. Nope. So while not directly labeling Hellenized Jews as Greeks, Paul's inclusive vision would certainly encompass them, especially those on the margin of traditional Jewish identity. You ain't got it, my man. Okay, so let's go from there real quick. Just give you another one. I just got like a couple of these. So let's go to some of these. And matter of fact, you know what? Let me continue reading. And I hit a couple more of these precepts that I got. So I followed up with, didn't some Hellenized Jews renounce their Jewish identity? Because it says if they renounce their Jewish identity, became apostates, then they would be identified as, heathens, Gentiles. Yes, some Hellenized Jews did renounce their Jewish identity, especially during periods of intense cultural pressure or personal ambition. This was not the norm for all Hellenistic Jews, but there are clear historical records of individuals and groups who actively abandoned or concealed their Jewish heritage, Israelite heritage, to fully assimilate into Greek society. Key examples of renunciation: reversal of circumcision, epispasm. All right, just going to hit some of the points. The high priesthood under Antiochus IV, 2nd century BCE, right? You had Jason Menelaus. They were paying for the high priesthood. Maccabean literature, right? First and Second Maccabees. These texts portray a Jewish civil war, an Israelite civil war of sorts between devout Torah observant Jews and Hellenized Jews who had abandoned the law. Some Jews made themselves uncircumcised and abandoned the Holy Covenant. First Maccabees 1:15, aligning themselves with pagan rulers and forsaken Sabbath, kosher laws, and temple worship. And that's why eventually these are the ones that, when we get to the New Testament, are the ones that are being sought for, the lost sheep. Diaspora Jews who assimilated. In cities like Alexandria, Antioch, and Rome, some Jews gradually assimilated to the point of losing their distinct identity. How many ways do they got to slice it for you? Over generations, especially with intermarriage and lack of Hebrew education, some descendants of Jews may have no longer practiced or even remembered Israelite customs. This is what we've been saying for how long? Maybe now you believe it that ChatGPT is saying it. Motivation for renunciation, social and political advancement, avoidance of persecution, desire for civic inclusion. Did they fully stop being Israelites? Legally or ethnically, they might still be considered Jews by birth. Yeah, but they don't know that they are. Religiously and culturally, many clearly cease to live as Jews, renouncing the law, avoiding the synagogue, intermarrying, or adopting pagan beliefs. In rabbinic and traditional Israelite terms, they would be considered apostates, meshumadium or minum, however you say that. Yes, some Hellenized Jews did renounce their Jewish identity actively and publicly. They weren't just passive assimilations in many cases. They rejected key markers of Israelite distinctiveness, circumcision, Torah, festivals, and embraced Greek or pagan identity. This led to major cultural conflict within the Israelite world, especially in the centuries leading up and during the Maccabean revolt. All right, now, the last question I asked, so would they be lumped together with Gentiles, meaning these individuals that forgot their identity? Yes, in many cases, Hellenized Jews who renounced their Jewish identity would be treated or seen as Gentiles, right? And let me get you something right quick. Bear with me. Let's go to the book of Matthew first. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 18. Did a lot of reading. Okay, we did a lot of reading. All right, it was very good reading. There were some hiccups, but they were very good readings. Salakia. Right. So this is Matthew 18:15. This is how to deal with someone that commits a trespass against you. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, verse 15, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. That means the brother that goes off, the brother that does something wrong to you personally, you step to him. Doesn't mean, all right, well, brother, the brother was breaking down Cornelius wrong. He was saying he was an Israelite, so I got to go to that brother first and talk to him about it. Then if he don't listen, then no. It's talking about if somebody did something to you, like if you have some fallout or whatever with a brother. That's what this is talking about. It's not talking about if a guy's breaking something down wrong, brother, you're supposed to go to him. No, them that sin rebuke before all that others may be aware, or something along those lines. Okay, but if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. Okay? So you cast out like a heathen. You're no different than a heathen. And when we go here to the word heathen man, ethnikos, which goes back to the word ethnos, where you see the word Gentiles. So yes, Israelites can become Gentiles. And this is what the New Testament is talking about for you boneheads out there. Now, let's go from there. Let's go to Romans chapter 2. One of my favorites when it comes to this topic. Verse 25. It says, for circumcision verily profited. Why? Because yes, the oracles of the Most High were committed unto Judah, right? If thou keep the law. So it'll profit you if you keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. So these Israelites in Israel, when you commit these acts that make you unclean, so to speak, breaking the law, they're looking at you, they're going to correct you, but if you don't take that correction, you're going to be looked at as a heathen, as an uncircumcised, as an apostate. Learn your history. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, now you have an individual, right, that an Israelite foreigner that starts to do certain things in the law, like not eating blood, not committing adultery, certain basic things that were given to the Israelite foreigners, right? Shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? Because now he's going to be circumcised in his mind. You see? And that's what happened with these Gentiles or these Greeks, which were Israelite foreigners. They were brought back. They were circumcised again. All right? So that's the point. Let's go back. So let's read that again. Yes, in many cases, Hellenized Jews who renounce their Jewish identity would be treated as seen as Gentiles, both by traditional Jews and in some contexts by early Christians like Paul. But how and when they were lumped together with Gentiles depends on who's doing the labeling. From the traditional Israelite perspective, traditional Torah observant Jews, especially in Judea, did not view apostates or Hellenized Jews as part of the faithful Jewish community. So what did they view them as? As heathens. In fact, they often saw them as worse than the Gentiles. Apostates. Apostate Jews, Meshumadim, were considered traitors, Jews who had abandoned the covenant. And they pretty much looked at these Hellenized Jews from back then, generation after generation. They looked at them with total disdain for selling out. These individuals were sometimes excommunicated or cut off from the communal life. And that's why you had a lot of them that would run to Samaria. Because among the Sumerians, you had a lot of different nations that were keeping the laws and customs, going all the way back when the northern kingdom was kicked out of the land by the Assyrians, and you had transplants of the other nations put there. So every time an Israelite was accused of breaking the law, whether he did it or not, if he didn't want to be judged, he would flee to the Samaritans. That's why they told Yahushua, had not we said you're a Samaritan and has the devil? That was a big insult back then to call somebody a Samaritan. Because they understood that you had a group of apostate Israelites that fled there for refuge. And that's why when Yahushua went there, he told that woman to get her husband. Because her husband was an Israelite. And there were other men there and other people there that were Israelites that were to receive that message. But for the most part, you had all different nations there. You got to know this history, man. Even in the Josephus, it speaks on the apostate Israelites. During the Maccabean period, they were openly fought and even killed by traditionalists for siding with Hellenizing powers, right? Like when, just listening to it the other night, Mattathias, the father of the Maccabean boys, he pretty much, there was this heathen that came to Jerusalem talking about make a pact with the king, and you'll be his friend, and you'll receive all these great honors and all this. And he wasn't moved by that. But then he saw an Israelite coming up to worship and to sacrifice pig on the altar, and that he lost it. And he took him out, and he took the ambassador out. And that began the beginning of the Maccabean revolt. So you had Israelites that fought for their laws, statutes, commandments, families, and you have others that sided with the enemy. So these ones that stayed looked at the other ones with great disdain, like sellouts, like worse than heathens. So what the fuck you think they're gonna call them? Oh, those are just Jews that forgot about No, they're gonna call them the worst thing that they can call them. Samaritans, Gentiles, uncircumcised, heathens. So ethnically still Jews, they were treated as outsiders and spiritually closer to Gentiles or worse. See? Number two, from the Hellenistic Roman viewpoint to the broader Greek or Roman world, a Jew who had fully assimilated and abandoned Jewish customs might no longer be recognized as an Israelite if they had a Greek name, like in the case of a lot of those Greeks that the Apostle Paul gave shout outs to, like a lot of the soldiers in the Roman military all had Greek names, Greek or Latin names, spoke only Greek. They had no way to identify otherwise, participated in pagan festivals, reversed circumcision, epispasm, ate non-kosher foods. They might simply be seen and accepted as a Greek or a Roman. That's why when the Apostle Paul, right, into, I hope this comes up. Come on, baby. Come on, talk to me. Right here. Acts 21:28. Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man that teacheth all men everywhere against the people and the law and this place, and further brought Greeks also into the temple. Oh my God. And has polluted this holy place. So they looked at these Israelites that were Hellenized as heathens. And they polluted our temple, man. Look at them. He got the goddamn toga on, with them tight ass sandals on. Look at him, man. Got that, the branding on his arm. Get him out of here. And that's what it says. They might simply be seen and accepted as a Greek or Roman, especially in the diaspora. So they were functionally treated as Gentiles by the outside world. And they were treated as Gentiles by the Jews in Jerusalem. From Paul's and early Christianity perspective, Paul's gospel and letters like Romans and Galatians make clear that there is no Jew or Greek, for all are one in Yahweh Shai, Galatians 3:28, and that's one of the ones I was going to read, so we don't got to read it. And that's why it said that. So in Paul's theological framework, whether you were a Torah-observant Jew or a Gentile Israelite foreigner or a Hellenized apostate Jew, see how they're trying to separate? There's like you got them cornered. There's like these wacky tacky Christians. You got them cornered, but they're still gonna come weasel out and wiggle with some other bullshit. They're gonna wiggle a different shape in the sand. No, it's talking about the Israelites. Period. Whether they knew they were Israelites, whether they were Hellenized Israelites, or whether they lost their identity and were being called Greeks. Your salvation and standing came not from ethnicity or law, but from the faith in Yahweh Shai. Therefore, someone who had renounced Judaism and blended into Gentile society would be treated spiritually the same as a Gentile. See, some who needed the gospel. Come on, man. That ain't what it's talking about. This makes Paul's inclusion of Greek significant. It would cover, bullshit. Not ethnic, culturally Greek pay. No, these were Israelites, possibly assimilated or apostate Jews who no longer identified as Israelites in any meaningful way. Let's see. So in rabbinic and post-temple Judaism, after the destruction of the temple 70 CE, rabbinic Judaism worked hard to redefine and preserve Israelite identity in this era. Israelite law treated the apostates with special legal status, sometimes like Gentiles, sometimes worse, Their food, marriage, and testimony could be considered invalid. The Talmud records debates about how far an apostate can stay and still return. So again, in legal religious terms, apostate Jews might be grouped with Gentiles, even if their lineage remained Israelite. Come on, man. Summary, yes, Jews who renounced their identity were often lumped together with Gentiles, both culturally because they no longer lived as Jews and religiously because they abandoned covenantal obligation. Depending on the context, Jewish, Roman, Christian, they could be treated as Gentiles, traitors, or equal recipients of grace. Their in-between status made them both controversial and significant in the ancient world. So pretty much just letting you know who these Israelite or these Gentiles or Greeks are. They're Israelite foreigners. All right. So let's go. I'm not sure. Let me go to First Corinthians real quick, 1. But let me see if I could find this other. I don't really need this anymore. And I want to hold on to it. I could always try to come back to it. This is Romans chapter 1, verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Yahushua, for it is the power of the Most High unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek, because they're both Israelites. Romans 2 and 9. Tribulation and anguish upon every soul that of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile, Israelite foreigners. Romans 2:10. But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first, and also to the Gentile. So why is it written that way? Well, let's go to Zechariah. What is that, 12 and 7? Yeah, I believe that's it. Come. Zechariah 12 and 7. Yahweh also shall save the tents of Judah first. See? Because Judah is the head. So in the case of these Gentiles, they were of the southern kingdom, right? So they were Jews and Benjaminites and Levites, but they forgot. So it had to go first to the ones that knew that they were Israelites. Then you can come and get some after. That's what the Lord told that woman, you can't get, the children's bread first, It says that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. That's why to the Jew first and then to the Greek. All right. So Colossians 1 and 24 says, but unto them which are called both Jews and Greeks, Yahweh shall the power of the Most High and the wisdom of the Most High. Because the foolishness of the Most High is wiser than men, and the weakness of the Most High is stronger than men. Right. Because you had Israelites from among, Israelite foreigners that were among the Greeks that were going to be brought back to the fold. And at that time, they were considered to be just gone. That's why in Ephesians, the second chapter, the circumcision, which were the Jews, called them, the Gentile Israelites, they called them uncircumcision. You're a bunch of heathens. All right? And that's, pretty much the main point. As you see, I was just having a little fun with the chat GPT asking certain questions. It's a good tool to kind of sharpen your sword, So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters were edified. To the next time I say Shalom. And Salaki, I didn't get to any of you brothers' comments. Salaki for that, but the water for putting the scriptures in. Shalom.